Thank you for being here. Greetings. Welcome. So today's video is mostly part 2 about how Osiris, well actually Isis, and sometimes mixed in with Innana, but great goddess star, Sirius links, Osiris links to the today known Jesus story. And in all of this research, I'm telling you, it all goes back to the stars. It all goes back, I think. So when we look at the story behind the calendar, outside of even the 9-day calendar, because I like it because of the energies of the planets. But when it comes to the stories, the Great Mother's teachings, even links to scripture, today's scripture, it to me all sounds like it goes back to the Great Mothers and to their stories around the stars and Osiris. And I've discovered, or I have found, I shouldn't say discovered, that these stars, not only have I shared this already, that these stars are seen all over the world and are significant all over the world, but then as the stars rotate, because right now Sirius, Orion, and the Pleiades are going out of our sight. They're setting a little after sunset, if not before in some places. And next would be the next line of stars. And then soon we'll start seeing the Milky Way. These were, and then yes, we had the moon and what we call, and the sun. But predominantly we look to the stars to see about floods, ceremony, and even migration. Specifically agriculture. So this is going to lead me into Osiris. So one of the things that are not in the myths and secrets, but is known, and I will remind, is that along with Sirius, Orion, and the Pleiades linking to agriculture and agricultural goddesses, Osiris is also known, my friend reminded me of this, so thank you. Osiris is linked to agriculture. He's also known as he's linked to corn and wheat. And this is what led into menu, my perception of the word menu. But the link to eating the flesh of Osiris was linked to the wheat, or the harvest that would be created from this star, showing them when to plant. Okay? So again, another link to agriculture, to sustenance, and to a star. A star. And we even name stars from goddesses. Okay? Astarte, and much of the language we are using today wasn't even around until more modern times, until basically, I want to say a little bit pre-calendar, because you would have to create a language well enough known for everyone to be able to agree to what is said in that language. Right? And I think this is where Latin comes in, because religion, well, I can't say all religion, but specifically Roman religion was based around Latin. And that's why they're called the Romance languages. But for my studying of the South American languages and just links to names of things. Oh, which I want to correct. I need to make a correction. I was mispronouncing the Incan peoples. The correct name of the peoples and the language is Quechua. Quechua. Or Quechua. And isn't that what some of the island language is called? Quechua? I was saying, I was pronouncing it wrong. And I can't remember how to pronounce it wrong, so I'm not going to try that. But I was mispronouncing the peoples. So from here forward, and that's specifically around like Mamakoto, and it could be Mamakoto, which I do think it is also spelled and pronounced that way. Anyhow, back to Osiris and agriculture. All of those stars link to agriculture, specifically Sirius in other cultures, and specifically the Egyptians around Osiris. And then we start looking at the links between Greek and Roman ways, government, so to speak, and it's very similar to the world government that we see today. It's very, very similar. Yeah, I didn't know that. I often romanticize, and I do think that it can be often romanticized that like Roman and Greek language and Greek ways, which they were, but they changed, were different from a lot of the government and structure we see today, but they were very similar, especially around women. Like I was correct about how Athena was presented, but I was wrong about how women were treated in that era around specifically even the Athenian goddesses. There was a lot of restrictions, but there were separate things for women and males, but there were a lot of restrictions, which I didn't know. Okay. So in part 1, with Osiris, I had left off around kind of the phallic reference to Osiris and also the link back to the mother and kind of that link that getting back to the mother metaphorically through, okay. And so we move on to primitive elements in the Osirian myth show its extreme antiquity dating back to Neolithic Egypt. Okay, the vulture is related to like the devouring of Osiris, and then we have a similar devouring with Kali. These are also patriarchal stories given to us because if we go off of nature and if we relate Kali's devouring to kind of reconciling with the nature of destruction or what we might call our own demons, then that would make a little bit more sense of, in relation to the human. But as far as the idea of devouring, there was a link between it. Okay. And I do think this is where we kind of left off about the discovery of fatherhood, because before that it was sons. So about 4,000 years ago, Osiris's cult was established at Abydos, where he was also called Osiris Kenti Amenti, the Lord of Death and the Lord of the Westerners, meaning those who had gone west into Death's sunset land, meaning sunset. And we even get sunset because of set. These are past, connected words. Okay? And he was an incarnate in a succession of sacred kings. Okay, so we can see that relation. And then their bodies were divided up and distributed into different parts of the country as an assist to fertility. And then in Norway, up to the 9th century, there were kings' bodies used to they were divided up and then spread around the provinces of the lands. So in this case it was 4, and so 4 pieces would go to the 4 provinces. And we say, up till fairly recently, this was a common thing to do with these particular groups. And then as this would also ensure the security of a good crop. Okay, and this goes back to the Osiris cults, right? And then in Christian churches used to be founded on spurious relics of apostles and saints, so Egyptian temples were founded on the parts of Osiris. Then you'll even hear today that people will have people under certain buildings on purpose. So this goes way back, okay? And different from what we're taught religion was based on. And that even goes back to the stars. Okay. Then we see the head of Ophiuchus on Lesbos, and the head of Osiris was presented in the temple of Abydos to serve as an oracle. So this to me links back to the movie where you'll see just the head, and it's usually of a female, and they're green. And what is Osiris? Like this, that also goes back to the link of his head being an oracle and being able to carry it around. And I wonder if this links to the story in the Sibyl Bible about John and his head. Just, because each story is told to us differently, and it's all, whoever's telling us it's telling us for a reason, not for the betterment of our knowledge and understanding of the universe. It's more for control and dictation from what it looks like. That's how I feel about it. Okay, so he would continue giving detailed knowledge after passing over. This was why they held on to his head. The shrine had a sacred well called Peq, P-E-Q, or Pega, the original home of the Pega nymphs, who guarded the oracle well of Pyrene in Corinth. Is that where we got Pegasus from? Like Christians seeking burial in consecrated ground by a church, wealthy Egyptians bought burial space near the Osirian temple as to share the god's resurrection. And there are private burial grounds for certain groups. Is this similar? Abydos therefore became the center of a great necropolis. The faithful claimed on their epitaphs, "I have become a divine being by the side of the birth chamber of Osiris. I am brought forth with him. I renew my youth." When certain sacrifices were replaced by animals, Osiris obligingly incarnated himself in a variety of beasts, notably the Apis bull, who ascended to glory. And then we know that those stars, Sirius, Orion, and Pleiades, are around the Taurus, as we know it, constellation. Okay? So I think there's a link there. Right? I mean, all right. And the Apis bull who ascended to glory, carrying away the sins of all of Egypt as he died in atonement. So would this be this time of year? And Osiris Apis later became the composite deity Serapis, a monotheistic god of Alexandria for 6 centuries. Okay. Then there were several Osirian trinities. One consisted of Osiris, the father, Isis, the mother, and Horus, the son. Another was Ra, the father, Osiris, the son, on earth, and Horus, the sun, rising on heaven. This is where we get horizon, from Horus, rising. Okay? Another was Ptah, opener of the way, a phallic consort of the Virgin and the opener of the matrix. Seeker was another name, representing the male, the underworld, and the hidden within the female womb tomb. And then the third, Osiris, newly incarnate as the menu, phallus, and standing for resurrection. So resurrection, isn't res something said for that specific? This is the word. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm just saying. Wow. Okay. Then the sacred lunar numbers 7, 14, and 28 were prominent in Osiris's cult. The lunar cycle, calling it, let's just say Osiris religion, because all cults on some level are linked to some sort of religion, it seems. All right, well, that's just me being nitpicky. Anyhow, the lunar cycle of 28 days corresponded to his descent into the underworld and the ascent to heaven. 14 days each way, or 14 steps on his mystic ladder. Buddha's ladder of descent to earth and return to heaven also had 14 steps. Like Buddha and Osiris, the Tibetan sage is still supposed to pass 14 days in the afterworld before encountering enlightenment in the form of the mandala of the animal-headed deities. And this is reminiscent of what we've been shown as far as Egyptian deities. But as I've shared with you, as we go into South America and North America and around the world, we start seeing other animal deities or animal-headed deities or animal mixed deities, because it seems as though as the indigenous people, they related stories from the stars to the animals and then to their lifestyle is what it looks like. Okay, let's see. The animal mandala headed deities. Okay, and so we see that's, yes, with Haruka, a possible conjugate of Osiris the sun, and Haru Harakatith, which is another mixture of like Osiris Haru. Okay, then the Hindu sacred dramas, the cycle of Osirian drama seems to have been keyed to the menstrual cycle of the goddess. So, like the Hindu sacred dramas, the cycle of Osirian drama seems to have been keyed to the menstrual cycle of the goddess, incarnate in the priestess who bore the title the Divine Mother. In the month of Athor, or Hathor, which makes me think about Ethor. Okay. Egyptian women made clay phalli as images of Osiris and threw them into the Nile when it was turned to blood in flood time, which can link back to the story of Moses. This custom, called the Oriental Conviction, that the goddess must have been menstruating at the time of her sacred marriage to the dying god. Later accounts explained Osirian lunar numbers by saying he was 28 years old at the time of his passion, or else that it took place the 28th year of his reign on earth. Okay. And then, as the Lord of Death, Osiris was sometimes identified with the great serpent of the underworld, and sometimes painted in the same serpentine form. Again, dark green, right? It can come in other green colors. Anyhow, serpentine form, bent around so his toes touched his head. In Ptolemaic times, Ptolemy, the whole underworld became Osiris's providence. Its 7 halls collectively called the House of Osiris. So we have like the 7 halls of Amenti, or the halls of Amenti. These all link back to the Osiris story, but the Osiris story comes originally from a star. Okay? A star. And not that there's no link between us and stars, but I feel like that's the point. There is a link between us and stars. There is a deeper connection between us and stars. But if we also then lock people into a contract of identity based on a birth certificate that was created by a governmental system to control people, what are we doing? What are we following? What are we believing? What are we misbelieving? So, as a former follower of basic religion, it all comes from stars that used to be named after mothers, that everything comes from the mothers first. Like, what? Okay, back to Osiris. And then different mystery cults took form with hundreds of verbal formula for making the worshiper become Osiris. And we see that today, where we're taught how to become a god, how to become more ascended, how to become more magical, how to become more goddess-like, right? We're being shown these different ways of being, and is it because this is kind of history repeating itself? And he would be born of Isis and nursed by Nefertis. He would ride across the sky side by side with the gods of the stars. He would be as virile as Osiris's menu. My palm tree standeth upright and is like menu. Spelled the same way we spell it today. Therefore, the phallus of Ra, which is the head of Osiris, shall not be swallowed up. When he was in heaven, the gods themselves would bring offerings to him, meaning he shall not be devoured. The Osirian mysteries taught words of power for bringing about these desirable effects. Such words of power were keys to heaven, to be concealed from non-initiates as a great mystery. Are the keys stars? Are the great mystery stars? The Sayite recension, the Sayite recension said such keys a soul could pass freely through the gates gatekeepers, guardians, heralds, inspectors, and other spirits of the heavenly mansions, for he would know all their names. So you'll hear this even in the Thoth story. You'll hear this in many myths, that unless you know the names of these deities and how important names are, then you're not getting anywhere. But let's remind you that in indigenous cultures, people weren't named sometimes at least 3 days after their birth. Sometimes up to 9 days. Sometimes longer. Okay, so who taught us the importance of names? Who taught us these magical spells about names? Who taught us that? And if it was from a female, was it other females that taught her that? And was that part of the time of the culture of how to survive? Or is that the true essence of that spell magic power? Because it looks to me that a lot of the information we've been given was told to us by usually pale, wealthy controllers that have created the education system. What gets published, what is tax-free, and what is taxable, what is considered holy, and what is good, and what is considered evil. And with all the hypocrisy, it just makes me wonder, like, why, even when I'm reading out of this, most of this information is, though the author is female, my guess is, and with this information, it took a lot of work, because as she's researching, and even as I'm researching, a lot of this information comes from the information that we are regularly getting comes from other males. So even some of the stories we get about the Great Mother could be stories from males. Right? Or we're told that they're from these females from males. And what did they leave out? And what did they interject? Because pretty much across the board, we're always demonized or left out or forgotten. Because, oh my gosh. Okay. Back to Osiris. So here is one of the quotes. And this is supposed to be out of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And the majesty of Anpu shall say unto me, knowest thou the name of this door, and canst thou tell it? And the majesty of the god Anpu shall say unto me, knowest thou the name of the upper leaf and the name of the lower leaf? On receiving the proper answers, the majesty of the god Anpu shall say, pass on, for thou hast knowledge, O Osiris. Okay? During the 1st century BC, the Osirian religion was established in all parts of the Roman Empire. Its popularity declined in the end because it was necessary, because of the necessary details became too complicated for the average mind. Words of power developed into lengthy catechisms of divine names, doorposts, lintels, bolts, panels, doorkeepers, spirits of the hour. Like we have spirits of the day, like we have days of the week, because they're ruled by certain planets that we give certain energies to. And this was even from like right to left, and you'll see this in religion and other cultures where you'll becoming a follower or a devotee. And we'll see this even with government and being a devotee in voting. You then are kind of obligated to these practices to uphold this deity. When did Great Mother do that? Did Great Mother require us to do lengthy things for her to get like a passing through her or certain privileges? You know what I mean? I feel like that is also very patriarchal. Okay. So with all those practices, Egyptians invented even a memory god to bring back the spells and holy names if they were stolen by spirits of forgetfulness. Because that's what's happening now with the great, like, did they invent a memory spell that is working post even when they created it? The important ceremony of opening the mouth was performed to let the dead speak and use words of charms. Still, the catechisms became too long, or the catechisms became too long and complex to be remembered. So people started not following the Osirian religions, but we still see it in certain places today. We still see great detail given to peoples and a court and a whole system. You see this with the Vatican and Catholicism with what just happened. It's a big vote, and it's predominantly, it's all men, it's all males, and it's also based on the stars. And it would be interesting to see I know what these stars were doing, but what it means in their knowing of the history of the stars and the stories of the stars and the link to the peoples and ancient said mysteries. It is said that the Egyptians believed the resurrection of the body in a changed and glorified form, which would live to all eternity in the company of the spirits and the soul of the righteous in the kingdom ruled by a being who was divine of origin, but who had lived upon the earth and had suffered a cruel death at the hands of his enemies, and had risen from the dead, and had become the God and the King of the world, which is beyond the grave. This is what the Egyptians believed about Osiris. Although they believed in all those things and proclaimed their belief with an almost passionate earnestness, they seem never to have freed themselves from a hankering after amulets and talisman and magical names and words of prayer, and seem to have trusted in these to save their souls and bodies, both living and dead, with something of the same confidence which they placed in the death and resurrection of Osiris. A matter for surprise that they seem to see nothing incongruous in such a mixture of magic and religion. So, it is a matter for even more surprise that the scholar who she's referencing, it seemed failed. This scholar's information seemed to fail to see, people seem to fail to see exactly the same mixture of magic and religion in Christianity. This is why I'm sharing this video, because I found Osiris again through researching the stars, the moon, right? And so then I looked it up in this book and I was like, what the heck? Because of the link to Passover, the resurrection, and it was Easter time at that time. So, and Easter, Estar, the star, it's just, even for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many clues to the truth, but I am, and I think people are often intrigued by what is popular over what is true. And will kind of get behind, because like astrology, it does seem to match and work. Like when you put it all together, it does seem to match and work, especially if somebody is telling you that that's how it works, right? So I feel like there's something to rediscovering the truth about the stars, because all over the world they had different New Years. All over the world they didn't have months, and where did they get the 14 days and 28? Did it come from the Great Mothers? I mean, it sounds like it might have, but it's associated to Osiris. So, but also linked to the menstrual cycle. What? Right? Which also goes back to what the moon and following what's going on at night. Okay. To this day, simple Christian folks still display the same hankering after crucifixes and medals and incantations and holy names, saints, relics, holy water, images, even rosaries, which they copied from the Egyptians. Christian formula of exorcism, baptism, extreme unction, which I'm going to have to look up because I don't know what that is. UNCTION, unction, absolution, etc., were words of power under different names. The notion of resurrection through identification and with a resurrected God by eating his flesh was in itself magical rather than religious. And this was the basis of the Christian salvation idea, no less than for that of Osiris's devotees. Moreover, it seems the concept of Christ was no less synergetic than the concept of Osiris. If anything, the older god had more right to claim an original system of worship or of superstition, depending on one's point of view. Meaning like the Egyptians with Osiris, because in their culture, we are taught the same thing, that they're a living being, but he would have been alive during their time of living, is the theory. But again, this ultimately goes back to Sirius and how Sirius is also called Isis. So I'm going to go into that real quick because there's a couple things I want to say before I go. Oh, it's not too long. Perfect. When I was talking about, so there'll be a lead-in. The more I research the stars, goddesses specifically, and ancient South American and or North American deities and religious systems and stories, what we see are a lot of erased great mothers. One of them being the link of Isis and Innana to Sirius as well. So, because of my curiosity about things, Venus is a planet, Sirius may be a planet, but we're told it's a star, okay? So, Sirius is the brightest star. Venus is a very bright planet that we can see. So both stars can be the morning and evening star. You have Venus right now, not even right now, in a few months. Because right now we have the evening star, which is Sirius, but it's pretty much going to the lower hemisphere, supposedly. It's going out of our vision. It's going out of the northern hemisphere's vision, and soon will be completely out of our vision until fall. Then what's happening is that Sirius is losing its evening star position. Venus is re-emerging as the morning star. So right now on the East Coast in the morning, you will see Venus in the morning. Then in the evening, in the fall, I think I just said it backwards. I said Sirius will be setting in the fall. So Sirius will be the morning star in the fall because now it's the evening star in the spring. Venus is the morning star on the east and will become the evening star as the summer goes through. But they both change places. And Isis and Innana are linked. Innana is linked to Isis because one is Egyptian, one is Sumerian. But Innana has a link to the stars. She is called the star goddess. She's linked to Mother of the Stars and being the brightest star, which can be both Venus. She is also known as being Venus, but she can be both Venus and Sirius. So again, another link to the Great Mother and the stars, but also kind of like the slow, kind of like we're going to talk about this one over here and link her only to Venus, making Sirius more of a masculine star, when even the Egyptians originally called Sirius Sopdet, which is a goddess. Okay. Now, I am saying all that because that's a big one. That's one that we're all aware of, but we're not given the full story about her full connection, Innana, to both Venus and Sirius. Now, here's something I recently found out through my other book, or not my book, but this other book, the Encyclopedia of Myths and Encyclopedia of Spirits. I was just going through it, and I discovered Ayao has a sister. You know that? Ayao has a sister. Her name is Ayao. I apologize. Ayao. Ayao. Okay? She is her younger sister. Powerful, fierce, smart, also moves wind and can do. She's the Orisha connected specifically to a whirlwind, okay, and can be linked with one of the other Orishas, Osayin, who is the Orisha of plants, and together they create a great medicine. Her attribute is a crossbow, which led me back to what we now call Orion, right? She lives in the forest and travels in the form of a whirlwind or a cyclone. Her colors are brown and green. Could also link her to the underworld as well because of plant life and growth. Her attribute is a snake. 9, like her sister Orisha, is her number. And that is a very short, I had to do a little bit more research around her because that's all there is in this book. And the research that I found is that there are different stories. Some say that she's not a sister. She was like a companion, sister, friend. But also that she became hidden. She was more popular earlier. It was known that Ayao had a sister and that this was her name. Yet she was kind of hidden. I didn't know about that. That's the other thing. I mean, maybe if I really studied the Yoruba religion and learned every single Orisha. I mean, there are a lot in this book. And in this book, predominantly the spirits, goddesses, Orishas are all female. It's predominantly female. Like, I'd say 30% of this book is males. In comparison. It's phenomenal. I mean, it is. And this what just brings me back to the truth of where we get a lot of these stories. So, I think that's... Was there another hidden goddess? Because I did find a couple more goddesses, which I will be going into. Whoopsies. A little bit more on a separate video specifically about South American goddesses and that type of thing, because I found Xiantico, or Xiantico, Chantico, or Xantico. Which, if you go into like Orisha, I apologize. If you go into Xhosa language, you'll see some similar lettering and sounds. But this is Aztec. So I'm just and then also Chantico. Yeah, I went down this whole path because I found that there is a lady, Chango, but she is Chinese, right? And then, but she's a moon goddess. Her name also could be Hango or Chang'e, but Chango lady is her name in Chinese. Okay, Chango, and then we have Shango. I mean, it's just, it is fascinating. Because especially language. Okay. Yeah, her ally, plant knowledge, crossbow. This is Ayao. Ayao is how you say her name. I apologize. And then I linked to, there is a Samothrace goddess. Samothrace. Samothrace, which is like the closest. I thought it was maybe like Samoan, but that is not for sure. But I looked up Samothrace goddess, and that's Exeros, spelled with an A, Axieros, another Eros. And where... Pause real quick. There's people called the Thracian Samos. That's where Samothrace comes from. And I will go into great detail about, or not great detail, but I'll go into more detail about Exeros. And that is kind of linked to Greek, but also a great mother goddess. Like, I hadn't heard about her. She's linked to Demeter and some other. She's a great mother. Okay. And then, side note, because we're talking about names and links and the stars. So, side note. Ceres. 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 The goddess. Italian. The original corn mother, goddess of grain. Is it a coincidence that Ceres' name sounds like Sirius? You guys, right? Scholars now believe grains were first cultivated for the purpose of brewing beer. That's another thing. When it comes to Osiris and restaurant and menu, another form of recognizing Osiris was through beer, because you use the wheat and barley for beer. And this is similar with Ceres, the goddess, linked with agriculture. Is this possible that she's literally a star? Okay. A primordial goddess, her linked to a cat. Beer. Related to words like cereal, growth. Same with Osiris. Ceres, those with cereal. Come on. The Italian great corn mother, again. linked to Mother Earth, the Great Mother Earth, or Mater. Ceres is literally an earthly goddess beloved by the masses. She was a highly significant and respected spirit. The Sibylline prophecies recommended an annual fast honoring Ceres. We see the same thing with Osiris. Okay. To link to a star. I'm just saying because the names. What? And Ceres to ensure an abundant harvest and avoid famine. She was also a spirit of healing and dream divination. Farmers traditionally offered Ceres the first harvested stalk of grain. Does this sound familiar? Iconography. She usually holds a stalk of wheat in her left hand and a basket or bowl of fruit in her right. Animals. Pigs. Pigs were kept in underground enclosures in her shrines. Sleeping among them allegedly produced healing dreams. Okay, wait a minute. Did we just figure out another link to casting demons into pigs and sows? Because they were her. They were Ceres. They wanted to get the feminine aspect. Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow. Did you all know that? I didn't know this. I didn't know that pigs were kept in underground enclosures and sleeping among them meant like you got special stuff. Healing dreams. Okay. Feasts. Her primary festival is called Ceriella, and it was celebrated around the full moon in April. It was a 7-day festival featuring games. This is around like the Seven Sisters also. Come on now. And was celebrated around May 29th. Her the Ambravelia was a festival featuring games, and that one happened around the end of May. Sacred sites. They were rededicated to the Virgin Mary, but the Roman Church of Santa Maria was built over Ceres' temple, and her temple in Apulia in Italy was rededicated to the Madonna of the wheat stalk, but that was the Madonna of the wheat stalk. Okay. Offerings, grains, baked goods, beer, the same for Osiris, the same with many other deities, and similar, holiday time, April, just saying, around the full moon of April. What else do we do around the full moon of April? Easter. Okay. Silver, gold, honey, images of pigs. Oh, I have a new affinity towards pigs. I mean, I never didn't have an affinity towards pigs, but this is nice to hear. Silver and gold pigs. You could wear a charm or a bracelet featuring a pig. That's so sweet. I had not heard that, but wow. Okay, so there's just some hidden things around the deities and hidden deities, and also links to Sirius or Ceres or that star. Is Sirius actually Latin and Roman for Ceres? And we just changed it a little bit and changed the spelling, but we still have a bunch of S's which relate to the Great Mother. I don't know, you know how my brain goes. Now, when it comes to the 9-day calendar, we just had a full moon, and the full moon energy, we have had some storms. There have been some storms, but the stars are shifting. So for the northern hemisphere, we're going to have warmer weather and a little bit of like warmer energy. but we still have the codes of delusion going on. So as long as we have codes of delusion going on, there's going to be things happening wildly, seemingly out of control, because of something controlling the natural evidence of us remembering. That's natural evidence. Us remembering is a form of natural evidence. So when we remember, natural evidence is going to send out different vibrations. And so the original vibration that doesn't want us to remember, doesn't want us to really see certain truths, are going to be destabilized, so to speak, or wobbly. And so a lot of sensitive people are going to feel that. And then we have some planetary energies. Let's see here. So today is a double Venus day. I'm glad I'm doing this video because depending on when you see this, I'm videoing this on a Friday. So on a Friday on the Gregorian calendar. So it is also, which represents Venus. And then according to my 9 planetary day calendar, we are also on a Venus day, which I intuited, which is how long I've been practicing this, which is pretty cool. It's also Endangered Species Day, according to the Audubon Society calendar. But also, it is the month of witches. So welcome to the month of witches. May is the month of witches. So happy May Witches Month. And if you so happen to have a birthday within this month, also happy birthday, happy May birthdays. Solar returns. But are they our birthdays? Would we have done that? I don't know. I think we celebrate each other. I think we celebrate each other in community. I think a lot of things in the world would be less overwhelming and stressful if we had community in the way that we used to. And it sounds like we did. And patriarchy actually is a deconstructing of community, a reconstructing of individuality. And you do that by so many things, but create a system that is actually different but similar to what we used to do. And I don't know, I just find it interesting. Like Sirius, like, are you serious? Seriously? Cereal? And then the pig thing. What? Did you all know that about Ceres? I didn't. But it would make sense in certain countries. I mean, it's similar to how the bull and certain animals are revered because they brought food. And the pig, interesting. I don't know if they were full-on food source. But they're very smart. I mean, they're similar to dogs, and they actually get cleaning through being in the mud and stuff like that, and that's what we used to do. We used to do mud baths, and not all of us, but we as an indigenous people, if we weren't around water and that type of thing. I don't know. I'm going to floating off a little bit on my wondering, but I definitely see a link between the casting demons into sows and pigs and them being a representation of the goddess Ceres. I can see that link because we always get demonized. I'm just saying. All right, that's all for this video. So I will be doing, my next video will be on those goddesses, a little bit about the stars, and then I'll have longer videos and more in-depth videos linking the stars, star maps, and that to different goddesses and stories for my members. All right, so I will do a little bit of singing bowls without me talking. There I go. Until next time, take care.